In the dead of night, without warning, Israeli jets pierced the skies over Syria. Their mission was clear, their target secret, and their success absolute. What followed was one of the most daring military operations of the 21st century, a strike so precise, so silent, that it erased a nuclear facility off the map before the world even knew it existed. This is the story of the silent strike and how Israel discovered, planned, and destroyed a nuclear reactor deep inside Syria and somehow managed to escape the political firestorm that should have followed. By the time morning came, the facility was gone, and the world was left with whispers and questions. How did Israel pull it off? And more importantly, how did they get away with it? The seeds of Operation Orchard were planted in secrecy. In the early 2000s, Syria was led by President Bashar al-Assad. They were quietly working on a project in the desert. Officially, it was a harmless industrial site, but intelligence agencies in the region and beyond began to suspect something else. The building at Al-Kibar in the Deir ez-Zor region didn't match ordinary industrial blueprints. It had the unmistakable shape of a nuclear reactor. Even more suspicious, it mirrored the design of a North Korean reactor at Yongbyon. This raised immediate alarms in Israel and the United States. Israeli intelligence, renowned for its sharp precision and relentless pursuit of threats, soon became deeply involved. Mossad agents began following key figures connected to the project, watching movements, gathering fragments of evidence, and piecing together the hidden puzzle. Their methods were as discreet as they were effective. Reports say that the operatives slipped into personal networks, broke into laptops, and quietly intercepted sensitive messages without a trace. By the year 2007, the picture was clear enough for Israel to act. The evidence pointed to a chilling conclusion that Syria, aided by North Korea, was secretly constructing a nuclear reactor. It was the one designed to produce plutonium, the essential ingredient for building nuclear weapons. For Israel, a country that had lived under existential threat since its founding in 1948, this was unacceptable. Memories of the Holocaust, coupled with the hostility of neighboring states, had shaped Israel's national doctrine. Their doctrine was never again, and never allow an enemy to gain nuclear weapons. In 1981, Israel launched Operation Opera, a daring strike against Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor. At that time, the world condemned Israel. The UN passed resolutions, the US publicly criticized the strike, and global leaders accused Israel of aggression. Nearly a decade later, during the Gulf War of 1991, the voices that once criticized Israel's bold strike on Iraq grew quiet. Many of those same skeptics now conceded that Israel had been right all along. If Saddam Hussein succeeded in building nuclear weapons, the conflict could have spiraled into unthinkable devastation. The very strike that had been condemned was, in hindsight, seen as a move that may have spared the region from catastrophe. Out of that moment of vindication emerged a principle that would shape Israeli policy for years to come. It became known as the Begin Doctrine, a pledge that Israel would never allow a hostile neighbor to develop nuclear weapons, no matter the diplomatic cost or military risk. To Israel, this wasn't aggression, it was survival. By 2007, when fresh intelligence pointed to Syria's secret nuclear program, that doctrine was once again thrust into the spotlight. The lesson of the past was clear: waiting was dangerous, hesitation could be fatal, and prevention was the only path forward. Operation Orchard was not born in a vacuum. It was the direct continuation of a hard-learned policy rooted in history and survival. Israel's leadership faced a stark choice: wait for diplomacy, which might fail, or act swiftly and decisively, risking war with Syria. For the Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and his cabinet, the choice became clearer with each passing day. Once Israel confirmed the intelligence, planning for a strike began immediately. This was no simple mission. The target lay deep in Syrian territory, surrounded by air defenses and close to the Euphrates River. Any mistake could expose Israeli jets to Syrian fire, sparking retaliation and possibly a regional war. Secrecy was paramount. Very few within the Israeli Defense Forces knew of the operation. The Air Force began simulations training pilots under extreme secrecy. Targets were marked, flight paths planned, and contingency measures drawn up. But there was another challenge: the United States. At that time, President George W. Bush's administration was deeply entangled in Iraq. Washington had to be informed, but the Israelis feared delay or political pushback. Olmert reportedly pressed Bush to take action, but the U.S. hesitated, preferring diplomacy. So Israel made a bold decision that it would act alone. Washington was informed, but Israel would not wait for approval. The operation was set in motion. On the night of September 6, 2007, Israeli jets took off under the cover of darkness. The operation was codenamed Operation Orchard. Using advanced electronic warfare systems, Israeli pilots jammed Syrian radars, creating the illusion of empty skies. Syrian air defense systems, among the most sophisticated in the region, were blinded. The jets flew low, hugging the terrain, invisible to detection. As they approached Al-Kibar, the pilots released their payload of precision-guided munitions designed to obliterate the reactor. In just a matter of minutes, the facility was wiped from existence. The roar of the jets gave way to explosions that tore through the desert night. Fireballs lit up the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Yet on the ground, Syria was still in the dark. No alarms, no immediate reports, only silence and confusion. By the time the first rays of sunlight touched the desert sands, the site had been reduced to little more than smoldering wreckage. The Israeli pilots, meanwhile, were already on their way home. Every aircraft returned without so much as a scratch. No losses, no dogfights, no dramatic spectacle for the world to witness. For an operation of this scale, the precision was almost surgical. It was over before most people even knew it had begun. In the aftermath, Syria had every reason to retaliate. A direct attack on sovereign territory could have justified military action, yet Assad's government chose silence. Publicly, Syria downplayed the incident, claiming Israel had hit an empty building. Privately, they knew the truth that their nuclear ambitions had been erased overnight. Why the silence? Because admitting the truth would have exposed Syria's violation of international law. Building a secret nuclear reactor with North Korean help was a scandal Damascus could not afford. So Assad swallowed the humiliation and moved on. This was Israel's greatest victory, not only destroying the reactor but also avoiding a regional war. By keeping quiet, Syria allowed Israel to walk away unpunished. When news of the strike eventually broke, it stunned the world. Rumors swirled, speculation filled headlines, but for a time, no one knew exactly what had happened in the Syrian desert. Washington, too, kept silent at first, standing behind Israel's choice to keep the mission shrouded in secrecy. It wasn't until months later that the truth came out. American intelligence stepped forward and confirmed what many had already suspected. The target reduced to rubble that night had indeed been a nuclear reactor. What had once been hidden in the shadows was now undeniable, and the scale of Israel's operation finally became clear to the global community. The international community, already weary from wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, reacted cautiously. Unlike 1981, there was no widespread condemnation. Some countries raised concerns, but most quietly acknowledged that Israel had likely prevented a dangerous escalation in the Middle East. For Israel, this was vindication. The strike not only eliminated a nuclear threat, but also sent a clear message. Any attempt to secretly build weapons of mass destruction in the region would be met with swift, decisive action. Operation Orchard remains one of the most successful and secretive airstrikes in modern history. It reaffirmed the Begin Doctrine and showcased Israel's intelligence and military capabilities. It also set a precedent. Future adversaries would think twice before pursuing nuclear ambitions in secrecy. The strike demonstrated that Israel was willing to act alone, without international approval, to safeguard its survival. Years later, when the details of the operation were finally declassified, military analysts marveled at its precision and secrecy. Unlike many modern conflicts, Operation Orchard left no messy aftermath, no prolonged war, just a clean, decisive strike that changed the course of history. Operation Orchard was more than just a military strike. It was a statement, a reminder that in the high-stakes chess game of the Middle East, Israel would always move decisively to protect itself. One night, one strike, and one nuclear dream reduced to ashes. What do you think? Was Israel justified in destroying Syria's nuclear reactor, or did it set a dangerous precedent?